It's fucking rotten, you fucking idiot. It's rotten.
Rotting potatoes. There is a difference between a good potato and a bad potato.
A dirty, rotten potatoes.
You got a rotten potato?
Gross, dirty, rotten potatoes.
It's rotten.
Potatoes. Potatoes.
No one in this family is hurling rotten anything at anyone.
Well, we're back with another episode of Rotten Potatoes, and it's been far too long, but it seems like a great time to do it since we just had on the podcast Abby Johnson and Ashley Bratcher from the new film Unplanned. It's coming out this Friday. I mean, it came out today if you're listening to this officially on Friday when we talk about it, because we did not record this in advance. We did not get any pre-screeners or anything. But, yeah, I wanted to... Jon Schweppe, I'm joined by. I should preface with that. Jon, how's it going, man?
It's going good. How you doing, Dan?
I'm like I said, I'm pretty low energy, Jeb, because we're recording this in the morning, which is not my favorite time of day. But
yeah, 12:01 a.m. on Friday, right?
Pretty much. 10:41 on Monday. Well, I mean Friday. Friday is when it is. Yeah. If you don't follow this show in particular, you can go listen to my interviews that I did with Abby Johnson, who wrote the book Unplanned, and the lady who portrayed her in the movie Unplanned, Ashley Bratcher. They came out the last 2 weeks, and both fantastic episodes, in my opinion. Jon, what'd you think? Because you weren't a part of those conversations. What'd you think of them as an outside source?
I really enjoyed both of them. I heard your first interview with Abby, and so I thought this one was, repeating a lot of what you guys had talked about before. But the thing that I thought was so incredible, and I'm hearing a lot of stories about this related to this movie, was Ashley Bratcher's story about how she learned after being cast as the lead in Unplanned that her mom almost aborted her. And that there's this story about how her mom was at this clinic and decided at the last minute basically not to go through with it. And that was why Ashley's here and why she was able to star in this movie. So it's just really incredible. I think there's a lot of forces at work here. And man, it's just it's going to be really interesting to see how this movie is taken by the public.
Right, absolutely. It's a crazy story because Ashley didn't know about it. The people that cast Ashley didn't know about it. Abby didn't know about her story. Nobody knew about it until long after she was cast and ready to start filming. Her mom called her and said, "Hey, just so you know, you're basically an abortion survivor. Now go forth and tell this story." It's pretty crazy stuff. But
amazing.
So, Jon, do you want to? Since you've got the energy and you seem to be all spiffy dressed up, and you're wearing what I would call your Republican ensemble, which means that you're going to be giving this movie probably an even more glowing review than I'm going to give it. But Jon, do you want to take the reins on what this movie is and what it's all about?
Sure. Well, first of all, it's not that Republican of an ensemble because I'm not wearing a tie.
That's true.
This is pretty chill for me, but
it's your casual Friday Republican ensemble, right?
Exactly. But no, this is a movie, as Dan has talked about previously, called Unplanned, based on the book by Abby Johnson, a former Planned Parenthood clinic director, and they turned her life story from a book into a movie, and it's an incredible movie. This is the non-spoilers version, right? Or is this
we'll start out with some non-spoilers and then we'll get into a little bit more specifics in maybe the second
basically
half.
I think the key takeaway from this film is it's not I wouldn't say it's necessarily like a film you go watch because you're looking to laugh and enjoy.
It's not a popcorn
nice film.
Weekend movie.
Right. No, it's a movie that makes you think a lot. It's a movie that really plays with your emotions. I watched a screener, I want to say like a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago. And it took me, I want to say 4 hours to get through the whole thing. Now and it's less than 2 hour film. I think it's like a 100-minute film.
Yeah. Something like that.
So, I had the ability to pause it, which is, was nice for me. You won't have that in the theater, but it is very powerful right away. It gets to the nitty gritty of the issue. And it does so in a way that really, I think, shows the main character, Abby Johnson, kind of dealing with these emotions of like, okay, I support women's rights. Like, I support the right to choose. Like, I think abortion is something that we should do as a, as the Democrats used to say, it should be safe, legal, and rare. Now all of a sudden Planned Parenthood wants to do abortions, later on and do late term abortions. And, is this right? And I think she has these conversations with her husband throughout the film, and you can kind of see her rationalizing her pro-choice position and her work, which she believes is important. And by the way, for the record, I mean, women's healthcare is important. I don't think it, it is very important to serve, especially some of these low income women. So she's rationalizing it. And then suddenly she gets to a moment that really just shifts everything for her. And she mentioned this in the podcast, so I can say this, but she sees an abortion. She goes in to help with the abortion. It's on an ultrasound. It's an ultrasound guided abortion of a baby at 13 weeks. And she sees the baby struggling and fighting for its life, trying to get away from the abortion instrument and failing to get away from the abortion instrument, obviously. And that is the first 8 minutes of the movie.
Hooray!
So right away,
waste no time getting into the meat of it.
They don't. No, they pretty much are like right away. You're dealing with the exact moral dilemma that Abby dealt with,
right? And
facing it in a similar way that she did.
Right, and I like the way they handled it too. It's kind of like a flash forward, and it comes back to it later on. So it's not like, oh, we see her turning moment, and then we just continue from there. It jumps back to the real story, which was her justification for working for Planned Parenthood for all those years. Not necessarily because she was a scummy piece of shit person, but because she was convinced that this was the right way. And so that's one thing that I loved about the movie. It showed the good of people who work for Planned Parenthood, and they're not all like evil demonic people or whatever. A lot of hardcore right people seem to scream and shout at the fences, and it also showed some Christians for some of the ugliness that they have a lot of the time, and being hateful and being like this demonizing, victimizing mentality. So it showed the realities and the humanity on both sides. And that was one of my biggest concerns when I found out, because I had read the book before talking to Abby the first time. John, had you read the book too, or not?
I haven't read the book. No.
Okay. The movie stays pretty true to the book, and that's one thing that I was really concerned about. Is I found out that one of my favorite books is going to be made into a movie, and I was like, hooray, that's great. And then I found out it's being made by the guys who made God's Not Dead, and I was like, oh no, oh dear God. Hopefully Abby has some say in what goes on here, because I mean, Abby's a straight shooter, and she's very like real about everything. She doesn't flower things up. So my concern was that they were going to give it the Christianese treatment and make it this very cheesy, I don't know, she walks into a church and the priest comes out and speaks to her and talks her into like all this, I don't know, flowery, fluffy bullshit. It wasn't that. Like there were some things that I would change about the movie, and we'll get into the specifics here in a bit, but there are some things about the movie that I would change. I'm not just like, yay, I love the message, so I'm all on board, but the movie's good. Like, it's handled well. It's told in the art is made well. It's told in a way that, like I said, it shows kind of the conflict at the beginning to give you a feel of it. Then it tells her story the way it played out, and it does it in a very good manner. And actually, the movie is rated R too. So I was, unlike most Christians, I was pretty stoked when I heard that, because this isn't a topic that you can give a flowery PG rating and have everybody just be all gushy about. Like,
Abby said that on your podcast, that she had heard from people who were saying, well, if it was PG-13, I'd go, but if it's R, like, here's the thing, and I had heard a lot of conservatives like not poo-pooing, but being frustrated by the R rating, it deserves an R rating because abortion is violent. Like, and what's important about this movie, I think, the way I would say it is that, like, it's a movie that I don't think little kids should see, to be honest. I think it's a movie that parents should watch with their teenagers. That teenagers shouldn't necessarily watch on their own. But it's not like it's so graphic that a teenager couldn't handle it either. They use, and I will say that for people who are worried about blood and gore, I go to the March for Life every year out here, and one of the most frustrating things is there are pro-life activists, and they reference this in the film as well, who come out with these signs of depicting abortion in the most bloody, gory way possible. And for me, I find that to be not a very convincing argument at all, because it completely detaches the humanity of what I'm looking at from the reality of abortion. So what this film does so well, it does display abortion one time very, very specifically, and then other times it's happening, but they don't just keep doing the same shock to you over and over. But it's not, there's not blood and gore. What they do is this is a spoiler, I guess, to a degree, but they show, they do show blood like going through tubes, so what's happening, but they're not showing you don't have to look away out of disgust. You just look away out of horror, which is a different emotion entirely.
It's all very realistic. It's not even played up. It's not like aliens popping out of their chest or anything like that, or they're being cut open to have their baby ripped from their womb or anything. It's very realistic. It's very raw, and the thing that I find interesting about it is that we in our society, we talk about abortion as this political issue, and it's like, oh, it's not violent. There's nothing. It's just a safe legal procedure, blah, blah, blah. But then if you put it on film, then it gets an R rating for violence and gore. So is it violent? Is it gory? Or is it just this safe legal procedure? Explain.
Well, and there are states in the United States where a teenager who can't get into a movie theater by themselves to see this film can go get an abortion in the same manner, at the same risk to themselves. I mean, it's really something. But no, I was really impressed with the way they handled it. Something I liked as well was, obviously the media is not going to portray this as an objective film, but you have to understand that the protagonist in this film, for the vast majority of the film, believes in what she's doing and believes she's doing good. And so do most of her coworkers, for that matter. And so I thought what was really interesting was the portrayal of all the different types of pro-life activists, who are perhaps not being very effective in what they were doing, as well as the ones who clearly were being effective. They were portraying the clinic workers, they were portraying patients. This wasn't a movie. I really want all of my pro-choice friends to see it, because I felt like it was articulating the pro-life argument in probably the best possible way. This was not a movie. I think there was one, it wasn't condemning women. There was one example that was in the movie where they showed a woman who had received several abortions and was very cavalier about the whole thing while her family was very upset. I think that was an example of, maybe one example where, it wasn't portraying women in the best light, although that's a reality. But the vast majority of women in this film who are receiving abortions, you feel nothing but like sorrow for what they're going through. The movie isn't trying to make you mad at women. And the same for the clinic workers. I mean, outside of the boss lady above Abby, there's not anyone that's really villainized. They're just kind of treated as people who are part of cogs in this machine that don't really understand what's going on. And I thought that was a very convincing and powerful way to go about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the, like I said, I've got some downsides, and we'll go into spoilers after this. But one thing that I will say for a downside was the boss lady. She seemed a little too on the nose villain with the, I don't know, like I've read Abby's book, and the way she seems in the book, she was a pretty terrible person in the conversation that they had, and it wasn't that far off. But to an outside person just viewing this, it almost seems like they And it could be that they played her up
Cartoonish.
a little too cartoonish, as the evil stepmother type with the dark hair and the brooding and everything. I don't know. Maybe that's how it was. And if it was, then sure, show her that way. But
it's challenging because the reality of what's taking place in these clinics,
right?
Selling baby body parts, having these abortions so late.
You're kind of a villain, so
I don't know what to say. I mean,
it's not like God's Not Dead, where anybody who's an atheist is trying to convert you to atheism, and they're this evil person. This was a person based on, according to Abby's story, that was saying, this is all about bottom line. We are a nonprofit, but that's just a tax status. Like, we are here to sell abortions. Basically, you need to up your numbers on abortion. This, like all these different horrible things. If that is what she was saying, then by all means portray the character like that. So it's fine.
Yeah. And I think we can talk about that a little bit on the spoilers, but that was a brilliant scene as well, where they're talking about, I can just say it now, I guess.
Spoilers from here on out. Let's stop beating around the bush. Let's go for it.
Okay. There's a scene I thought that was really genius. A lot of people have talked about this Planned Parenthood statistic, and if you talk to any pro-choice people, you'll hear them say this: that abortion is only 3% of what they do.
Right. That
if you look at the total number of services provided, not dollar amounts, but total number of services, that it's 3%. Yeah. And one of the things the cartoonish villain lady in the film does is so Planned Parenthood is expanding their business and wants to do more abortions. They want to do later abortions. They want to build up these huge clinics. And Abby in the film, and this is before her conversion, is expressing concern about this. And she says, look, I joined Planned Parenthood because I really believe in our mission to provide women's health for low-income people. And I never got in this for abortion. I thought our job was to reduce the amount of unplanned pregnancies and avoid abortion. And after this, Abby kind of like raises her hand in a meeting with a bunch of other clinic directors. So afterwards, the cartoonish villain lady pulls her aside and is like, "What are you doing?" Like, blah, 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 blah. And Abby's like, "Well, I don't get it. Like, what's the issue?" And the villain says, "Well, think about like a fast food restaurant. Like, a fast food restaurant makes very little off their hamburgers. Like, that's not where they make their profit. Where they make their profit is items like fries or soda, where they're low cost, high margin items. And that's what abortion is." And so she's basically saying our business model, and she says this, our business model is abortion.
Right.
That completely flies in the face of the public rhetoric about it being 3% of what they do, and it's just a minor thing, and they actually don't care. No, they absolutely care about abortion because it's how they're in existence. And then the thing I thought was so funny, and this is true, I work in the nonprofit world. I've worked on campaigns. I can tell you there's some truth to this. The idea that nonprofit is a tax status, not a business model. And the reality is, yes, like the only thing that makes a business, like a corporation, different from a nonprofit is that they distribute their profits to shareholders. But nonprofits just grow. So like the more money that nonprofits bring in, then they can hire more people. They can pay their employees more salary. Like, it's just a different way of filing your taxes, but it's still business. And so that to me, I know it was a little cartoonish, but as I thought it was a really compelling way to tell the story of how Planned Parenthood actually works.
Yeah, absolutely. And according to her book, that's pretty well how it played out. And like I said, they seem to stay pretty true to the book as far as I can remember. It's been a while since I've read the book, but I was impressed by that, even just from an artistic standpoint, because you always hear, oh, it's not as good as the book. It was pretty damn good. I wouldn't say that it's necessarily as good as the book, because they had to, they had to keep things moving. They had to keep it within a certain amount of time. They couldn't tell every little detail, but it was good. It was good. Another thing that I liked is, like I said, it kind of shows the bad side of Christianity and the bad side, well, quote unquote Christianity. These people that are victimizing, or not victimizing, but demonizing Planned Parenthood people. It even showed one of the incidents where, dude shoots up the abortion doctor in the church. It's like it's They show the ugliness at the fence, and they show like the bad sides of the pro-choice movement, God, you guys need to change your names. They're too similar.
I do like
pro-life
anti-abortion. I think saying pro, if you want to say pro-abortion, they don't like that.
Sure.
But I think it's pretty clear. There's a pro-abortion side and there's an anti-abortion side.
Sure, yeah. I mean, they're for abortion, so they're pro-abortion. It's fine. Yeah, and people who are pro-life aren't against choice. They're just against abortion, so it's anti-abortion. It's fine. But yeah, it shows this incident where dude shoots up the abortion doctor in a church. It doesn't show the shooting, but it talks about it, and it presents all these terrible things that even anti-abortion people are doing. So I really appreciated that.
Yeah, and I think it's important to be an honest film. I think it's pretty obvious what Unplanned is trying to do here, which is to convince people on the fence. It's not a rah-rah pro-life film, and it's not a, obviously it's not a rah-rah pro-choice film.
Right.
Planned Parenthood's not going to like it very much.
It's also not a political film. Like I told Ashley Bratcher, I told her the subtitle to the movie should be called Unplanned. This isn't about Trump. Leave it at home. Like, this is not about politics in any way. So leave your political leanings at the door, because it's really just about an issue that needs to be addressed and discussed.
So I work in politics, obviously, and so I think about the issue of abortion usually through that vein. Like, what should be legal? Should Planned Parenthood be funded by the taxpayer? Should abortion be legal up to the moment of birth as it is currently?
Or after, if things don't go
after.
right.
Yeah. And so I think these are all important questions. Like, don't get me wrong. But the vast majority of abortions are abortions where the public is actually pretty evenly divided. So 7 weeks, 8 weeks, 9 weeks, this period. And I think what this film does so well is politics isn't going to really address that. That demand for abortion. But this is a movie that affects culture and affects the way people view abortion. And what's happened, I think Planned Parenthood and their allies have done such a great job at this, is that abortion has been kind of dehumanized. Like, it's been completely you don't think of abortion. If you talk to anyone who's an abortion advocate, they don't talk about abortion. They're just like, it's a woman's right to choose. It's about controlling reproductive health. You go get an abortion from Planned Parenthood. They're not going to show you the ultrasound. They're not going to show you your baby. And this film tries to break down those walls. And it does successfully, I think. And so for me, my goal with it, and I know a lot of people won't take me seriously as a unbiased arbiter, but
sure.
I think this is a film that everyone should go see, just to make the decision for themselves. If you are pro-abortion and you can look, and I'm not trying to condemn you, but if
I
you
don't
can
work for the Republican Party or any party in any way, and I will agree with you. So if that helps,
if you're pro-abortion and you can go look at the first 8 minutes of this film and see a 13-week baby, this is accurate, scientifically accurate, moving away from the abortion thing and fighting for its life, and you're okay with that and can still call it a clump of cells, then good. Then I'm happy for you that you can do that. But I want you to have to go see it.
Right.
I think for you to actually have an opinion on abortion, you need to be able to see what an abortion actually physically is, who's inside there, and then make the decision from there. And I have pro-choice friends who will say, I don't know, maybe abortion should be legal up till 2 years old because, kids don't have, these people are wild, but kids don't have sentience or whatever. Okay, you can have your weird opinions. I just want you to see an abortion. And if you still feel that way afterwards, well then, I guess it's another kind of conversation.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that was, like it shows in the movie, and like she said in her book, that was Abby's turning point, because she was completely, she didn't like abortion. She just saw it as a necessary thing, and she wanted to help people have the ability to get it safely and legally, and she wanted to do her part in women's health. And the turning point for her was she went all these years as the director, but she never had to actually be in the room when it was actually occurring. She never had to, deal with that. And then one day she did. She had to see it with her own eyes, and now she is completely anti-abortion and is an advocate against the thing that she, worked for so many years. So I agree with what you're saying, that, seeing that and actually processing that in your brain, at like looking at what is actually occurring, I think it definitely has those visuals. They're powerful, and they're ones that definitely have the ability to change some minds, in my opinion. And Abby's story is one that really solidified my views, because before reading her book, I was kind of on the fence about some of the things too. So I get it. I get where, especially if you don't really care, if you're not a parent or a potential parent, you don't really care. It's like, it's fine, whatever, let them do what they want. Read Abby's book, watch the movie, and if you still feel that way, then more power to you, I guess.
I think the way they used Abby in the film was just really brilliant. Now they used two types of storytelling devices. One I liked and one I didn't. Okay, so yeah. I will have, and I think you know where I'm going to go with the
one that you didn't like was my biggest downside on this movie.
Yeah, so we could talk about that, because this is a film review. But
yep.
The storytelling device I liked was that because Abby is our protagonist, but for most of the film you see her as a pro-choice clinic director who believes in what she's doing and is surrounded by these people who believe in what they're doing. It gives an authenticity to everything you're seeing, even when it contradicts the pro-choice position.
Right.
And so I just thought that was just a really interesting way of going. And I felt like the film, while I'd give it a strong A, I felt like the film competed with itself a little bit on doing these voiceovers. Which I was not,
voiceovers. Okay, let's talk about it.
Which I just think this should be a rule of film.
Yes.
Period.
Show don't tell is a rule of film. Stop explaining every single thing. It becomes a little bit demeaning, and I'm not bashing on the film, but we have to get into the things that I disliked about it.
No, yeah.
It's a little bit demeaning to your audience to think that they couldn't possibly figure out what you were trying to say without it being explained to them. It becomes a little bit.
Sorry to interrupt you, but the perfect example of that was the baby shower party, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
because this is a scene where Abby and the clinic employees had just spent a day performing all of these abortions. They had a couple scary episodes, and they get it all done. And at the end of all of it, they have a baby shower for Abby because she's pregnant. Mm-hmm. And then they go to voiceover.
This is how I felt at the baby shower. We saw it.
we understand. Like it was, and I still think it was a good scene.
Sure.
But it was there was such a cognitive dissonance that was taking place before I heard the voiceover. Like, it was like, oh my God, they're having a baby shower, and they just finished aborting babies that are at the same gestation as this baby they're celebrating. And then Ashley Bratcher, not her fault. But then she came on and told us about it, which,
we know, we were there with you. We saw, we felt the feelings. Yeah. And I've got a couple other things, but that was the most glaring thing. And I actually texted you like 20 minutes into the film, and I'm like, for the love of God, stop with the voiceovers. Like, a good film, but don't tell.
It's fine. It was fine in the opening. I don't mind a voiceover to introduce the movie, and then you go into the storytelling. But
it does fizzle out a little bit about 3/4 of the way through the film when it gets into the real nitty gritty stuff. But then it comes back and it's peppered in here and there. It's like, why? Just trust that you are able to tell a story in us experiencing these experiences with the character that we are related to. We can't read her mind. We shouldn't be able to read her mind. Just let us see what she's doing and let us decide for ourselves.
It's actually, I mean, not to get too critical, but it's a disservice to Ashley Bratcher, because she's a fantastic actress.
That was another note that I had down here. She, like, Christian film aside, she is an amazing actor. And as it got into it, like, some of the stuff that she did, I was like blown away by her performance in any not Christian movie, in any film. There were some actors in this that were a little bit more subpar. For the most part, they were pretty decent, but she was phenomenal, I thought, in her acting ability. And she's, like she said in the interview that I did with her, she's on screen for like 95% of the movie. Yeah. So it's like almost all her, and she freaking killed it. So good on her. And
one of the things I notice a lot in movies, when you, especially usually is a female character, but when a female character is required to constantly tap into emotion and that becomes like the trope associated with their character. Well, that was the case with Ashley. She was required to tap into her emotion constantly, but each scene felt unique in the way she did it. That's what I couldn't, it was incredible to me. I felt like I was watching Abby
cry again.
Right.
It was like she was actually portraying what you would be going through in that particular moment, rather than now cue up the waterworks. Here we go again. Go ahead and cry. It was like,
and usually
you could feel
the thing is, usually when she cried, I mean, I at least for me, the first time I watched it, that was when I was involuntarily crying as well. So. So it kind of just worked, and again, no voiceovers, but
sure,
it would have been better. But but it was pretty good.
Yeah, and another example of emotion, show don't tell, that they did great was again, we're in hardcore spoilers here, but at the very end where they show her at the fence with the card written to her 2 children that she had aborted personally. It just says like, I don't know, like, I don't remember what it said on the card, something alluding to that it was a tribute to her 2 children that she had lost, that she put at the fence. And then she's tearing up and I'm tearing up, which is very, I'm not much of a crier in any capacity, even in real life, but it was like, it's such a powerful moment and a great way to end it on. And they didn't, to my recollection, I don't think that they said, these were the cards that I wrote for my 2 children that I like. They showed it rather than explaining it, and it was a really powerful moment.
That scene I thought was really artful, and they had her at the fence. And by the way, they also showed, I know we haven't talked about them as characters, but we have the 2 pro-life activists, the husband and wife, who throughout the film are. You could accuse them of being portrayed in like a perfect Christian,
always wearing polos, always clean cut.
Right. And just, Mara Lisa was just a sweetheart. And she was actually, I liked the way she was portrayed because she was the goodness of the pro-life sidewalk counselors. And I wanted to see that. And I thought they did a good job of showing that. But we find out during that scene that Mara Lisa is also putting a rose on the wall or on the fence, which shows, oh wow, she had an abortion too. And guess what? They didn't tell us that. They showed it. Right. So that was really nice. But as that scene, they showed that, and then they zoomed away from the clinic, and you just see thousands, maybe, definitely several hundred of these flowers on the wall, and it's just like I'm moving, like, my God, what are we doing? And I really felt like that was like kind of, you see it at just this clinic in Bryan, Texas, but like then you just kind of like realize like, oh my God, what are we doing?
Right.
Like this isn't one child. This isn't hundreds of children. It's millions. Right. And so I thought that was a really one of the better storytelling devices they did.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious. I would love to see a director's cut of the film where they just remove the voiceover entirely and see if you actually get the same feelings and the same emotion without any of the explanation. There were a couple scenes where they had to go through a thing pretty quickly, so they had to kind of explain some backstory. There's probably good ways that they could have done that with things that you can see, but there are some times where I'm like, maybe it made sense there, but I would be curious to see if the film played out just as well or better without any of the voiceover. That would be really interesting.
Yeah, when I am going to go see it again, even though it'll be like my 6th or 7th time seeing it. Sure. I want to support the film, and so I'll think about that while I'm watching it. Like, if this was
just plug your ears every time the voiceover starts.
I'll be honest, I did not mind it at the beginning or at the end.
Yeah.
The way they used it, I thought that was fine as an opener closer. It's just
that's pretty typical.
I don't think you need narration in the middle because it was so clear, what we were being shown.
Yeah, like I said, there were some moments where she had to explain, like, I don't remember exactly what it was, but something to do with specifics on like procedure and stuff that lended itself to the story, and there would have been. There probably was a way to do it without explaining it, but I can see why they would have done it there. But it a little bit much, a little heavy-handed for the most part on some of it. Also, another complaint that I had was there was one quote unquote pissing and one ass. those were the hardcore language moments in this movie.
I didn't even notice those.
I did. I was waiting for it because Abby said that there was some cussing in it, and I was like, oh, we'll see. I mean, it was fine. There should have been more if it was going to be realistic, especially like between her and the evil stepmother Planned Parenthood overlord when they're like arguing and stuff. I mean, come on, there had to have been some profanity in those arguments to make them realistic, but it was fine. It wasn't like jarring, and most people won't even notice, but I'm a cynical bastard and I notice those types of things.
What did you think of the lawyer? Did Abby talk about that at all in the book?
She did. And I don't remember exactly. I think that the dude was a great character in the movie. I thought he was a great, comic relief. I'm pretty sure that she did talk about that in the book and how he was just kind of this flippant, laid back, chill guy going into it, which threw her off. I could be wrong, but whether it was accurate or not, I thought that his character, especially getting to the end when things are, really, they're getting pretty heavy and seeming pretty dire and everything. He was like a nice comedic relief. Like there's good comedy in this movie too. Like it has all the human elements that you look for in a film. And I would also say another praise is regardless of any voiceover, the production and the film work in this, they're spot on. Like some of the camera angles, some of the tricks that they did, they are good filmmakers.
Yeah.
Just some notes for next time. Show don't tell. That's all.
Well, I think that's just like a to any film student out there, like something. But and not that I'm an expert or anything, but
sure.
but yeah, no. And I was ready. Look, God's not dead, right? You're gonna have cringe moments in these movies, and so I was ready for that, and I was willing. I think the message is so important. Like I'm willing to suffer a few. But I didn't cringe. Right. I mean, don't get me wrong. I cringed at the abortion scene, not because of anything wrong they were doing.
Not because it was cheesy, because it was awful.
The script was really strong. Mm-hmm. The character playing. I mean, I thought for the most part the actors were very good. Mm-hmm. But I never really was like, oh, that's weird. Like, oh, come on, like don't do that. Like there was no scene of the evil Planned Parenthood person like suddenly becoming, oh, I'm pro-life too at the end. Like, no, that didn't happen. Like the villain stayed the villain. But what was interesting, and I know I've already said this, but I think in our rhetoric and the way we approach the issue of abortion, we probably think of people like Abby as strictly that villain. Right. Mm-hmm. Like, and I think it's important to understand that there's a lot of really good people who believe that abortion is okay because they just don't know better. Mm-hmm. And so, and I know that's really patronizing sounding and, I'll probably get attacked for it, but if that's where films like this are so important, because I think we need to get people woke.
Right. Don't use that. You're too old to use get woke, but it's fine. You brought up the cringe moments, and there was a very surprising few. There was one for me, but I'm a cynical asshole, so this might not land for anybody else. There was one and maybe two, but there was one conversation between her and her husband where he tells her, God will forgive you. And she says, how could he? And he says, because he's God.
Oh yeah. That's
End of scene. I'm like, come on. That's not how that conversation went down. It's not because he's God. I mean, that's just a little too Christian-y for me.
Turned the husband into like this, like, this is where the Christianity in the film is going to come out. I mean, he
doesn't drag her to church and say, here, now you have your come to God moment. It was, for the most part, realistic, but
he was really patient with her, I think.
Yeah.
Given everything. And
that's how it played out.
Scene where he loses his patience because I think he even says, like, you're so damn close.
Yeah.
Like, don't you understand? Like,
right.
And I'm sure that was really frustrating, but no, I think that's a testament to him too. Like to be able to have such love for Abby, despite really being strongly opposed to her career and her life choices, and having the confidence that she would eventually be able to figure out for herself.
Yeah,
on
there's
abortion.
a cute love story in here too, and it shows
Yeah.
like some of Abby's failed relationships in the past a little bit. It doesn't go to what's the word, rom-com or anything. It doesn't
Right.
go to chick flick, but there's a nice love story in there that I found to be played out well. And that's one of the biggest issues with Christian movies is that they typically park the message cart before the art horse. And I think that that's something that they did for the most part really well is they made a good piece of art and it just so happened. I mean, they had some great material to work with and they didn't screw it up. So good on you guys. But the other thing that I found a little strange, and it was almost nothing, but the parents of Abby were a little too stereotype. Like whenever she calls the parents, the mom's right there to get the phone and the dad is like right next to her working on something. Oh yeah. It's like, come on, these people have lives. They're not just the old Christian parents waiting for their daughter to come to this point where they're sitting around woodworking and things. They were probably like, oh, okay, you wait till I tell your father, and I'm sure he'll be happy to like. Sure, it's a movie, and you gotta cut a few corners to make it flow well, but a little unrealistic in some areas in that aspect.
I think they were almost a gelatinous blob character, the mom and the dad, but I think they're just using that to show like there were these forces in Abby's life that were trying to guide her towards this outcome, but we're letting her get there herself, right? And I think that's kind of how they use those characters. And I don't know, I didn't mind it, but you're right. Now that I think about it, they were in every single scene. No, there was a scene where Abby's mom was talking to her upstairs, and they had a fight. And then downstairs, the dad was with the future husband. Was like, "So, you still love her, huh?" Like, you know, and that was I guess, the one separation scene. But. Sure.
Another thing that stood out to me was not a sexist, regardless of what the internet might say, but the 90% of the soundtrack is these strong pop female artists who are like, this is my strong female song. Like, all right, guys, we get it. She's a woman. She's going through some stuff, and she's strong. There was actually one. I don't remember what it was. I meant to look it up, but there was one song where it was in like a dark moment in Abby's life, and it was all about being strong. And it was when she was like overcoming, and it was when the storm was coming, and she's like, they're hunkering down. They got to get through all these abortions real fast so that they can get home. Yeah, it was weird that they played like an uplifting song during that, like, I will overcome or something like that, when she's like overcoming, and her overcoming is aborting more babies than normal on a weird day. But that seemed like a strange musical choice.
That might have been a deliberate choice.
Sure, because it makes you relate to the character, and she feels like she's accomplishing something good. Right. But I kind of just... I don't know. I wondered how the artist who agreed to have their song be used in the movie felt about their song being used for almost a pro-abortion message. But, you know, it is what it is.
Yeah.
I also liked as a Christian movie, in kind of the aftermath, it shows them on a Halloween night, and it doesn't say anything negative about Halloween. They just go and they're trick-or-treating, and it's fine. It's fine, you guys. It's fine.
That's a subtle message. I didn't think about that, but that's true. Yeah. So, you know, people who see this might be like, hey.
Yeah. It almost has nothing to do with the movie. It's just showing them like in their day-to-day life, and they're humans, and they're celebrating Halloween, and it's okay. That's probably what gave them the hard R, Christians, because they portrayed Halloween and not a demonic light. Yeah. Anyway, that's pretty much all I've got. John, do you have any final thoughts? We'll get ratings. You already kind of said yours, but do you have any final thoughts before we get to that?
No, I think the key thing is like, and I know a lot of your listeners probably are pro-life, but some might not be. And a lot are not. To the pro-lifers, I'd like to urge you to you're going to go see this film probably, and if you go, I'd like you to take someone who isn't pro-life. And I just, this is just like, I know this is kind of like turning this into an after-school special, but like,
it is.
I really but that's the reality of what this film is. Okay, like this film is about it's not enjoyable in the traditional sense. Okay, it's not a get away from life type of film. It's this is what's happening in real life film, by the way.
I kind of wish that Christianity was completely left out of the movie, to be completely honest, because like that's going to be off-putting to some people. And when you say things like, make sure you take somebody who would disagree with this, it's like, that's what they've said about every single Christian movie in the last 25 years. So this one I would agree, though.
I mean, I do think it was downplayed compared to a lot of Christian films I've seen.
It was, yeah.
But,
it's realistic.
There was talk about her going to church and being really uncomfortable with the message. I remember one of her coworkers, mentioned that she was Catholic, and then I was like, but I don't care what anyone says. I know I'm doing God's work.
Right.
And so, I mean, it kind of like mentioned the tension, I think, between at least more conservative interpretation of Christianity and the pro-abortion view.
Sure.
But I don't know. I think that's what I'm hoping for this film. I am encouraging pretty much now, at least for the next year, when I have arguments with my pro-abortion friends, I'm just going to say, have you seen Unplanned? Okay, go watch it and then we can talk. Because I think it's a film that, I just want people to see what it is and then criticize it to me. That's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can criticize the movie all day long. That's fine. But the again, good message, but also a really good piece of art. Not in my opinion, it's not like an A or an A plus necessarily because of the few things that we laid out that I would say just from an artistic standpoint I would change, but that's fine. There are very few movies in the world that I would give an A or an A plus or even an A minus, so that's totally fine. Personally, I would give it probably a B plus range, somewhere around there. If you took away the voiceover, then pretty much any of the other things that I pointed out as kind of negative things I would have not even noticed, but the voiceover just was the only glaring thing to me, and it's not so much that it ruins the movie by any stretch. If you took that away, though, it would be an A for me probably. But what do you think?
So I do think to a degree it's like women's sports. Okay, so like this is
you're going in a sexist direction here.
I'm going here. So this is essentially a Christian film, right? So, like, do you say, like, oh, like if a female runner, man, I'm going to get in trouble. A female runner wins a gold medal at the Olympics, but is like, ranked 505th in the world versus 504 other men. Are you going to like bash her for being first among women? Of course not.
And it's not a female movie. We're not comparing female to male movie. We're comparing movies with a message to like Christian type movies, faith-based movies, to Guardians of the Galaxy. No, it does not stand up. That's fine.
So I would say, given that, and given that you need to almost like, handicap for that, I would say it absolutely deserves an A. It's probably the best. I don't even want to call it a Christian film because I don't think it is, but it's in that vein. So it's the best Christian film I've ever seen, and it's certainly the best pro-life film I've ever seen. Absolutely. And given that, and I also think it competes with regular films in that it is, cinematically good. So
I would see it in theaters.
So that's kind of where I'm at with it. Like I'm not going to beat it up because ultimately I think it's done a phenomenal job at what it was trying to do.
Absolutely. And it was an uphill battle from the start, and hopefully they can overcome some of these obstacles because it's an uphill battle on both ends of the spectrum. It's like if you talk to a secular person, they're like, I'm not going to see it because it's a Christian movie, so it's going to suck. If you talk to a Christian, they're going to be like, I'm not going to see it because it's a rated R movie, so it's the devil's work. So they don't really have a baked-in audience like most Christian art pieces do. So I would definitely recommend going to see it and support it based on it's kind of an underdog movie, and it's a really good one. And so it comes recommended by me, and that takes a lot.
I know that this probably won't be a reality, but I actually think Ashley Bratcher should be nominated for an Oscar for it. I honestly do, because she's just, her portrayal, the movie is good, okay? But Ashley's portrayal is excellent, and I can't stress that enough. Like, it's just phenomenal. I'm not an actor, but I did do theater in college and that sort of thing, and
you were in The Music Man in high school too.
That's right. I was Harold Hill. Forgot we did that 2 times, and I forgot my lines at both of them. So that was really good. But I was really that was something that I just kept thinking throughout the movie. It was like, oh my gosh, like she is just doing a phenomenal job at owning this character, a character she learned about a week before filming.
Right.
And owning this character and really like making us feel the emotions as she was progressing in this journey. I just thought it was really, really exceptional, and way to go, Ashley. I appreciate it.
Agreed 100%. And like I said, it takes a lot for me to feel anything. But she made me feel a little bit. So Ashley, well done. Good job. And again, if you guys haven't heard the interviews that I did with Ashley and Abby both, you can check them both out. They're in the same feed, or if you're watching this on YouTube, they're there too in the last couple of weeks. But Jon, thanks for being here, and hope to get people to go out and, you know, if for no other reason, just go out and see it as a piece of art, and maybe have an open mind and see it, and just see the reality of what this thing is that we are all making into a political Trump or not Trump issue, because there's a lot more to it. And I think that this film really puts it out there in a very bold and brave way in a time where that type of thing, if you bring it up, you've got to be a hardcore gun-toting Republican, and people will assume that it is a political message, and it's not. So go check it out, and that's it. But Jon, thanks, and we'll talk to you next time.
All right, see ya.
Potatoes.
Hey Downers, if you like this video, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. But more importantly, go join the Downers Club at patreon.com/thesystemisdown, because the evil wizards of YouTube almost never let us monetize anything on here. Thanks.